Most of the protests in South Florida have been peaceful, but last night things took a turn in downtown Miami when 2 statues were vandalized.
Police say 7 people ended up being taken away in handcuffs today. They made their first appearance in court. So let's get to it here. NBC6 reporter Ari Odzer, he was there as they faced the judge.
And he wasn't the only one. A crowd of supporters also showed up. Ari?
Well, Jackie and Keith, those 7 people were charged with things ranging from vandalism to assaulting a police officer to inciting a riot. It happened right around where I'm standing. We're at the Torch of Friendship at Bayfront Park, right along Biscayne Boulevard. And 2 of the casualties from last night's incidents have been dead more than 500 years. We're talking about Christopher Columbus, and over here behind me, Juan Ponce de Leon, who we all know never found the fountain of youth, but he did start the rush to colonize Florida. Cops versus protesters is not the story, according to Miami police, who say they only arrested those who assaulted officers or were involved with vandalism, defacing the statue of Christopher Columbus on the east side of Bayfront Park and the Ponce de Leon statue on the other side, hands painted red to symbolize blood.
The line is when you start damaging property, when you start damaging police vehicles, that is the line between protesting and vandalism, and that's not something that we're going to tolerate.
Police arrested 7 people. Their supporters gathered outside the courthouse to watch their bond court appearances on a Zoom link. None of them would talk to us or explain why someone painted a hammer and sickle on the statues. That's a loaded symbol which could be counterproductive to the goals of the Black Lives Matter movement. And also the question of why bother with Columbus and de Leon also comes up.
It would have been unquestioned 50, 80, 100 years ago that these guys were giants in the history of the hemisphere and had a positive force in the hemisphere. Today we look at it a lot differently.
Historian Dr. Paul George of the History Miami Museum says unlike Confederate generals, there's no direct link between Columbus and Ponce de Leon to the oppression of African Americans. But as explorers, both men started the process which led to slavery in the New World.
We see Columbus as someone who enslaved Native Americans when he arrived here in 1492 and the subsequent voyages. We see somebody that sort of opened up the area to the despoilation of the environment, to the disappearance of Native Americans, diseases introduced by Europeans that came after him.
Native Americans killed Ponce de Leon in 1521. But the Spanish had already decided to colonize what they called La Florida.
So he opens the floodgates to the disappearance of essentially the Native Americans who were in Florida at the time he arrived. It would take a couple hundred years, but they would disappear also. So that's what I see as his role.
So what about the debate about leaving controversial statues of people in the public realm instead of moving them to museums? Well, George says if you're going to leave them in public, they should have markers on them which explain clearly their positive and negative legacies on society so that the historical context is clear for everybody. We're live in Miami. Ari Odzer, NBC6 News.